This is probably my meanest book review ever. Gave me the ick so hard. My first real DNF candidate. Welcome to a very late reading recap. I read 12 books in the month of May and June. Really quick, I also want to mention that I decided to finally start posting TikToks. I have a book haul over there. I'm hoping to have more content coming soon. I'm at Sarah Rihanna on TikTok, just like I am literally on every single platform. I would really appreciate it if you head over there and follow me. I'm also going to link my TikTok profile down below with all of the usual links, my Goodreads profile, links to all the books mentioned in today's video, etc. But let's go ahead and get into it. My hair has a life of its own today, so I've just accepted my fate. I'm giving up. But anyways, going all the way back to the beginning of May, the first book I picked up was Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. This is another book that was sent to me from my Amazon wish list. So thank you so much to the person who sent me these books. You have no idea how appreciative I am. This is a romance between a Major League Baseball player and his best friend's younger sister in the small town they grew up in. Travis is trying to repair his playboy image after an injury ends his baseball career, and Georgie is tired of everyone in her family treating her like she is a little kid, so they strike up a fake dating agreement. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. Generally, I feel like Tessa Bailey is the queen of spicy romance novels, and she did not disappoint with this one. However, there was some dialogue from our male main character that just gave me the ick so hard. It just pulled me out of the moment. Another element of this story is that Georgie forms a women's club, and there is a scene in this book that is just beyond cheesy. It is a literal angry mob where every woman in town shows up at her house and is mad that they have been excluded from this club. Overall, I enjoyed this read, but moments like that knock this down definitely at least 1 full star for me. I didn't like this enough to continue reading the books in this series, but I will continue to pick up books from Tessa Bailey in the future. I actually have Hook, Line, and Sinker to read next, which I'm excited about. I don't even know where to start with Book Lovers by Emily Henry. If you've kept up with my reviews, then you will know that I loved People We Meet on Vacation and Beach Read. So I pre-ordered Book Lovers, no questions asked, and people are singing this book's praises. But when I read reviews from other people, I feel like I read a different book entirely. Don't get me wrong, I did still give this 4 stars because the writing was witty and relatable and incredible like her other books. I felt kind of like I did when I was reading In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle, where I was expecting this epic, beautiful romance, but I really got a story more about friends, or in this case, sisters. The main character, Nora, is a cutthroat literary agent from New York City who hasn't had much luck in her love life. She's got big Capricorn energy, and this book really plays into your classic stereotypical rom-com tropes, kind of similar to the way The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood does, but in a slightly more polished way. Nora and her little sister Libby move to a small town literally in the middle of nowhere, where Nora runs into Charlie, who is essentially her nemesis back in the New York publishing scene. I really did not care about Libby at all, and she is a huge focus of the story, but at the same time, you don't really get enough info about her to make her a well-developed, compelling character. Like, her only character trait really seems to be that she is a mom, and I've also seen a lot of people say like, oh my god, I want to be best friends with Nora, and I don't understand that at all. I do not get those vibes. The romance was cute. I would have liked to see a whole lot more of Charlie and way less of Libby, though. Personally, it's a very slow burn in the beginning. Like, the first 100 pages, I was kind of like, okay, come on, let's pick up the pace. And then kind of out of nowhere, the romance gets hot and heavy. So I guess the pacing felt a little bit bizarre for me. I feel like this is a book I need to reread because I feel like there's just something I'm missing. But at the same time, I'm not feeling super inclined to pick this up again. Honestly, I forgot I even read The Wife Between Us until I sat down to gather my notes for this video. That's how little I've thought about this book since finishing it. I think I'm coming to the conclusion that the whole domestic husband and wife struggling marriage type thrillers are not for me. There will be more on that later in the video. This book's whole shtick is when you read this book, you will have many assumptions, assume nothing. And because I had that thought in the back of my mind, I was able to predict the big twist in this book way before it happened, and not much really happens after that. So it was definitely a letdown. I don't really know how to describe this book without spoiling anything. Is this a bad review? Probably, but I kind of just want to move on with my life and leave this in a little free library or something. Oh, and there's also a scene in this book where the main character is sitting in a waiting room looking at an aquarium, and the authors describe the aquarium and they list off multiple types of fish that couldn't be kept in a tank together. So that really bothered me. A 2-second Google search would tell you that this isn't an accurate thing to include in your book. Next, I listened to both of Jonathan Van Ness's audiobooks. The first is called Over the Top, and the second just came out recently, and it is called Love That Story. I gave these 4 and 5 stars respectively. We'll talk about Over the Top first, since that came out in 2019. Over the Top is Jonathan's autobiography or memoir. Were there things I didn't like about it? Yes, but as someone who is a huge fan of Queer Eye, it was really great to get a glimpse into Jonathan's life and learn more about them and kind of go beyond the fabulous hairstylist personality that they portray on the show. This book does deal with heavier topics like SA, addiction, HIV diagnosis, etc. I will say that this book is written the exact way you would expect, like in JVN's pure, authentic voice. So I definitely think audio is the way to go. I don't think this would translate very well to the page. You need to hear it in their voice, you know what I mean? Love That Story is a collection of essays, and this is exactly what I wanted from Jonathan's second book, and I feel like it is a really great reflection of how the world has shifted and changed even just in the last 3 years since their first book was published. The essays in this book touch on race issues, justice reform, gender identity. It's a far more educational book, and you can really feel Jonathan's passion about these topics. And it does open with Jonathan's experience writing their first book and how it has impacted their life since it was published, which was kind of fun since I listened to these back to back. So I got like the immediate follow-up. Overall, I would recommend both of these if you are a fan. Next up, I read The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is a workplace enemies to lovers with a twist on your classic fake dating trope, because our main characters, Shay and Dominic, are actually fake exes. They work at a struggling radio station and they get roped in to hosting a show for dating advice when their boss overhears their witty repartee. So they construct this fake relationship, fake breakup story, and as the show takes off, their deception gets out of hand. I laughed out loud numerous times while reading this book. I really appreciate it when an author can successfully insert meme culture into their stories. There's just so many casually funny little tidbits in this story, like referring to something as the Kevin Jonas of compliments. It also had a really diverse cast. I feel like I could relate a lot to some of the things that the main character was going through, and overall it just felt like a really great representation of the millennial experience while simultaneously being steamy and hilarious. I gave this 4.5 stars. I honestly couldn't put my finger on what was holding me back from making this 5 stars, but this was such a good read. I honestly feel like I should just bump it up now, because this is definitely something I would reread in the future. After that, I was in the mood to feel pain, apparently, because I picked up the heart-wrenching, life-ruining, 800-page behemoth that is A Little Life. If you are unfamiliar, basically everyone describes this as the most depressing piece of modern literature. It is said to be 800 pages of pure trauma. From the way people describe this book, I honestly expected to be sobbing throughout the entirety of it. Like, that's the kind of sadness I was expecting. So I was really surprised when it actually delivers this sinking pit in the bottom of your stomach sense of despair. I was also really surprised to see that there are moments of happiness in this story. They definitely do get a little bit smothered by everything else that is going on, but when good things would actually happen to the characters, I was really nervous, first of all, because I was like, okay, there's going to be some twist, like this isn't going to work out okay, but when things actually did, I was like, oh, okay. I did end up giving this 5 stars. I didn't cry for the longest time while reading this book, and I thought I was in the clear. I was like, yes, I'm going to make it through. But then when there was like about 150 pages left, this book absolutely broke me. And when it dawned on me that I had formed such a deep attachment to Jude and Willem's characters, without even realizing it, it honestly just took my breath away. This book and this author receive a lot of criticism for different reasons, but one of the main thing I see people annoyed about is the fact that this book does not have a happy ending. Spoiler alert, sorry, I feel like that's kind of implied from the nature of the book, and it doesn't end with like a positive message or a lesson. I enjoyed that. I don't think every story should have a happy ending. I don't think authors should only write stories that have happy endings because that's not reflective of real life. People experience profound trauma and mental illness, and while they maybe go on to be successful and have positive experiences, that doesn't mean that they don't still suffer tremendously and have demons that they battle on a daily basis. I just felt like this was a more realistic depiction of the level of trauma that these characters experience in this book. I honestly would have been kind of mad if the author put like a positive spin on the end, like, oh, everything worked out great after all. That kind of would have pissed me off. On the other hand, this next book felt like someone made an AI bot read all of John Green's novels and then had it write its own. This is probably my meanest book review ever, but All the Bright Places is my first 1-star book after getting back into reading. I thought this book was a terrible portrayal of mental health, especially since it is targeted towards young audiences. You may be wondering how I can praise A Little Life and then turn around and shit on this book. They are very different. First of all, I feel like A Little Life actually does show you that there is help and resources out there for you, and there will be people who love and accept you even if you feel like you're unworthy of that. And it's also just not a book meant for teens. All the Bright Places somehow manages to glorify unaliving yourself while simultaneously shitting on people who have mental health disorders. There's a moment in this book where the main character is told by his counselor that he likely has bipolar disorder, and he writes this off because he isn't crazy, and bipolar disorder is something that only crazy people have. And it really bothered me that nothing is done to dispel this thought and educate this character and show him that he is wrong. I don't have bipolar disorder personally, but as someone who went through a lot of mental health diagnosis as a teen, I would have found it really damaging to read a character say people who have OCD are all crazy and then not be given any information to correct that. I just feel like this book handled so many things very poorly. Maybe I would have found this beautiful and touching and deep when I was like 14 years old, spending all my time on Tumblr, but as an adult reading this, it just lacked any substance at all. When Sparks Fly by Helena Hunting had so much potential. I'm a sucker for a taking care of your love interest while they are sick trope. Two of my favorite romances have caretaking while sick chapters in them, and this sounded like 300 pages of that, so I was immediately on board. This is about best friend roommates. Avery gets into a car accident and Declan has to take care of her while she recovers, and they realize that there is more than friendship between them. I was certain this was going to be a 5-star read. I was really into it right up until the main characters hook up for the first time. Everything after that was downhill. It felt like the author planned out the first portion of the book really well, and everything else was rush and an afterthought. I'm going to give you a mild spoiler to show you an example. Avery and her sisters run a hotel and event space. It's a family business. Their grandma has just retired, leaving them fully in charge for the first time. Grandma is away on a 6-month trip to Italy to celebrate her retirement. It is a recurring plot point in the book that Avery and her sisters are budgeting and trying to save money to build a fountain on the hotel property as a tribute to their grandmother, so they can surprise her when she gets back from her trip. This fountain comes up numerous times in the book, and over 6 months' time does pass in the story. So what do you expect would happen? Grandma comes home, you get to meet her, there's a big fountain unveiling scene, she gets to meet your new man and they're hitting it off. That is your epilogue right there. That's what you would expect would happen, right? Wrong. Literally none of that happens. You never meet the grandma. The fountain is never mentioned again. That thread goes nowhere. That pretty much sums up my feelings for this book. I could have stopped after the first 130 pages or so and been way happier. Honestly, thank God my next book was a 5-star read. I went into You Lucky Dog by Julia London with fairly low expectations. Something I've noticed is that the kind of less hyped, lesser known romance novels all tend to hover around a rating of 3.5 on Goodreads. So I've been going into these books with an open mind but not expecting much, and I found this to be absolutely delightful. Really precious premise here. Carly and Max both have basset hounds, and due to a mix up with their dog walker, they accidentally end up getting each other's dogs. Now I can appreciate this and find it cute because it is fiction, but believe me, if I was in this position and I didn't know where Kobu was, I would be screaming and crying and throwing up. One of the things I appreciated appreciated most was that it did something different with your classic third act breakup that happens in romance novels. Listen, I get it. You need to drive a wedge between your characters so they can come back together for this grand gesture, grand declaration of love, but it does get tiring when every romance novel seems to rely on a stupid miscommunication to bring this to fruition. This book mixed it up a little bit. Yes, the characters are still apart for a blip, but it was handled in such a more mature, realistic way. Carly, I believe, is 28 and Max is in his 30s and a college professor, so I love that I didn't see a petty argument that could have been solved / avoided if the characters would just like calm down for 2 seconds and actually communicate with each other. This had great family dynamics, cute dogs, tender moments, very welcome steamy scenes. It was overall very enjoyable for me. Second to last, I read Good Girl Complex by Elle Kennedy. We were really ping-ponging all over the place with these reviews because in this case that 3.5-ish rating should have been taken as a warning. Mackenzie goes off to a fancy prep school for college with her pedigree boyfriend. She has grown up with a silver spoon in her mouth, but she is so sick of always playing by the rules, doing everything to please her parents, and she ends up falling for her small college town's local bad boy heartthrob. There are so many events in this storyline that should be big moments, but they just come one after the other and everything kind of gets glossed over as a result. There's also this big reveal that the book is building to at one point that ends up being such a letdown. None of these moments really get their chance to shine and develop into anything interesting because it's like something happens, boom, here's another plot point. Boom, here's another plot point. The characters felt very one note and kind of shallow. Oh, and also I actually tweeted about this while I was reading because it was that absurd. There is a scene where the characters make out in midair on a slingshot ride. Elle Kennedy, have you ever seen a slingshot ride? That is physically impossible. Even if you're not taking the force into consideration, there's no way you could like move around your restraints to make out with the person sitting next to you. Like what? What? Let me know if I should read The Deal by Elle Kennedy still, even though I didn't like this book, because that book and that series has been recommended to me before. Actually, just in general, if there's ever a book I dislike or feel kind of average about from an author that you think has a different book I would really love, please let me know. Sadly, I do have to end this wrap up with another 1 star. This book came so highly recommended to me by numerous people that I honestly feel bad that I didn't enjoy it. Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney was my first real DNF candidate, and the only reason I was able to finish it at all was due to the fact that I listened to the audiobook on 2x speed while reading along with this. Going back to what I said earlier, I just don't think the husband and wife domestic thrillers are my cup of tea. I read The Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing and didn't enjoy it, The Wife Between Us, as I mentioned earlier, and now this. Please, if you have a recommendation in this genre that you think I would enjoy, I am definitely open to reading it because I want to change my mind. I was just so bored throughout this entire story. The reviews on this are all over the place, so I would say if it does appeal to you, give it a shot, but if you're not vibing with it in the first little bit, then bail because it was not worth finishing for me. The twist didn't wow me, there were plot holes. I kind of immediately blocked this from my memory, I feel like, after I read it because I read this less than a month ago, and while I could give you like the basic premise, I could not explain what happens in this book to save my life. That's going to be it for today, you guys. I'm sure this video is already crazy long, so I want to wrap things up. Don't forget to check out the description box for links to all of the books, my Goodreads profile, my Amazon wishlist, etc. And go follow me on TikTok. I'm at Sari Rihanna on there. I'm also at Sari Rihanna on Instagram and Twitter as well. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy these book reviews. Hit subscribe down below if you are new. I will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.